"Keep your eyes closed," he said. Emma's fingers tightened around the edge of the wagon seat. She could feel the heat before she smelled the smoke, a dry, crawling warmth that pressed against her eyelids like something alive. Her father's hand was steady on her shoulder, but his voice had cracked when he spoke. That alone told her everything she didn't want to know. "Papa, not yet." The wagon lurched over a rut in the road and she heard the horses snort, restless. Somewhere behind them a woman was crying. Emma didn't recognize the voice, but she knew the sound. Grief had a texture out here in the high desert of New Mexico territory, sharp as broken glass, hollow as a dry well. She was 16, old enough to understand that when a man tells you not to look, it's because what you're about to see will change you. Her father's ranch had been her entire world. 300 acres of scrub and hard earth, a 2-room cabin with a tin roof, and a barn her grandfather built with his own hands. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. And now, Emma, open your eyes. She did. The sky was orange. Not sunset orange, wrong orange. Angry, choking, unnatural. The barn was a skeleton of flame, ribs of burning wood collapsing inward with a sound like thunder. The cabin was already gone. What remained was smoke and ash, and the terrible quiet that comes after violence. Her father climbed down from the wagon without a word. His hat was gone. His face was streaked with soot and something darker. Emma followed him, legs shaking, boots sinking into the dust that used to be home. "They said we had until Sunday," her father murmured, staring at the wreckage. "They lied." Emma turned. Behind them 3 other families sat in their wagons, faces blank with shock. The Callahans, the Ortiz family, old Mr. Brennan, whose wife had died last winter. All of them had refused to sell when the railroad men came through. All of them had believed in fairness, in the law, in time. The wind shifted, and Emma saw it, a figure, standing just beyond the flames, tall, still, watching. Her father saw it too. His hand moved to his hip, but his gun belt was gone, lost maybe in the chaos of the evacuation. Or taken. "Who is that?" Emma whispered. The figure didn't move, didn't run, just stood there in the haze like a ghost made of smoke and spite. "Get back in the wagon," her father said quietly. "Papa." Now Emma, but she didn't, because the figure stepped forward, and Emma realized 2 things at once. It wasn't a man, and it wasn't alone. A girl, maybe 18, maybe younger, wrapped in a torn wool coat too big for her frame. Dark hair tangled and wild. Her eyes were wide, not with fear but with something worse, recognition, like she'd been expecting them. Behind her, half hidden in the smoke, stood a boy, younger, 10, maybe 11. His face was streaked with tears, and he clutched the girl's hand like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Don't shoot," the girl said. Her voice was hoarse, barely louder than the crackle of burning wood. "We didn't do this." Emma's father raised his empty hands slowly. "Then why are you here?" The girl's jaw tightened. "Because they told us to wait, to make sure no one came back." She glanced over her shoulder toward the road that led to town. "They're coming back to check. If they find us talking to you." "Who's they?" Mr. Brennan shouted from his wagon, voice cracking with rage. "Who burned us out?" The girl flinched. "The railroad, the men they hired. They said," her voice faltered, "they said anyone who didn't sell would be made an example." Emma felt her stomach twist. "And you helped them?" "No." The girl's eyes snapped to hers, fierce and desperate. "We were brought here. We didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice," her father said, but his voice had lost its edge. The boy started to cry again, silent and shaking. The girl pulled him closer, and Emma saw the bruises on her wrists, rope burns, fresh. Her father saw them too. His face changed. "How long do we have?" he asked quietly. The girl swallowed. "Maybe an hour, maybe less. They're drinking in town, celebrating. But when they come back," she looked at the wagons, at the families with nowhere to go. "You can't be here." "We got nowhere to go," Mr. Callahan spat. "Then you'll die here," the girl said flatly. "That's what they want." Emma's father turned to face the others. His shoulders were bent, but his voice was steady. "We go north, to the Canyon Pass. There's a camp there, miners, drifters, not the law, but not railroad men either. We can figure it out from there. And what about them? Mrs. Ortiz pointed at the girl and boy. They're witnesses, they'll tell. The girl didn't flinch. We won't. Why should we believe you? Because the girl said, voice breaking. They'll kill us too. Silence, except for the fire, except for the wind. Emma's father looked at the girl for a long moment, then he nodded. You're coming with us. They heard the horses before they saw them, a low rumble, rhythmic and inevitable, like the sound of a storm rolling in from the plains. Emma's heart kicked hard against her ribs. Her father's hand found hers, and he squeezed once tight enough to hurt. Move, he hissed. The wagons lurched forward, wheels groaning as the horses strained against the harnesses. The girl and boy scrambled into the back of Emma's wagon, crouching low among the salvaged blankets and kitchen tools. The boy was still crying, and the girl clamped a hand over his mouth, eyes wide and wild. How many? Emma whispered. Too many. The girl breathed. The riders appeared through the smoke like demons, 6 of them, maybe 7, silhouettes against the dying firelight, hats pulled low, rifles slung across their saddles. They moved slowly, lazily, like men who'd already won. Emma's father kept the wagon moving, but he didn't run. Running would give them away. Running would make them pray. Keep going, he murmured. Don't look back. But Emma did. She always did. One of the riders broke away from the group. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a beard that obscured half his face. He reined his horse to a stop at the edge of the burned cabin, and dismounted, boots crunching in the ash. He was looking for something. Where are they? His voice carried rough as gravel. The girl and the runt, they were supposed to stay put. Another rider laughed. Maybe they ran, maybe they burned. They didn't burn. The bearded man kicked at the wreckage, scattering embers. She's too smart for that, and too stupid to run far. Emma felt the girl go rigid beside her. The boy whimpered, and the girl's hand tightened over his mouth. The bearded man turned, slowly, and looked directly at the wagons. Emma's breath stopped. He couldn't see them, not clearly, not through the smoke and the distance, and the failing light, but he knew, somehow, he knew. You think they'd take her in? One of the riders asked, amused. The bearded man smiled. It was the worst thing Emma had ever seen. Only one way to find out. He swung back into his saddle. The others followed, and then they were moving, not toward town, but toward the wagons, toward them. Papa, Emma whispered. Her father didn't answer. His jaw was set, his hands white-knuckled on the reins. The other wagons had seen the riders too. They were scattering, breaking off in different directions like rabbits fleeing a wolf pack. But the riders didn't follow them. They followed Emma's wagon. They know we're here, the girl said, voice flat with terror. They know we took them. Emma's father glanced back once, just once, then he snapped the reins hard. Hold on. The wagon exploded forward. They lost the riders in the canyon path. The horses were blown, foam-flecked and trembling. Emma's father guided the wagon into a narrow cleft between 2 boulders, hidden from the road, and killed the lantern. For a long time no one spoke. They just sat in the dark, listening to the sound of hoofbeats fade into the distance. The girl was shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion. The boy had finally cried himself silent, curled against her like a wounded animal. Emma's father climbed down and checked the horses. When he returned, his face was grim. We can't run forever. They'll track us come morning. Then what do we do? Emma asked. Her father didn't answer. Instead he looked at the girl. What's your name? The girl hesitated, like the question was a trap. Grace, she said finally. And this is Samuel, my brother. Where are your people, Grace? Her mouth twisted. Dead, or gone. Same thing out here. Emma's father nodded slowly. The men who took you, how long have you been with them? 3 months, maybe 4. Grace's voice was hollow. They found us after our PA died, said they'd give us work, food. Instead she stopped, swallowed. They made us watch, made us help clean up after, said if we ran, they'd find us, and they'd make it slow. Samuel started crying again, and Grace pulled him closer, rocking him like a child. Emma felt something break open inside her chest. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the only thing she'd saved from the cabin, a small wooden horse her father had carved for her when she was Samuel's age. She'd carried it everywhere as a girl. It was worn smooth now, the paint mostly gone. She held it out to Samuel. The boy looked up, eyes red and swollen. He stared at the horse for a long moment. Then slowly, he reached out and took it. Grace's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," Emma said quietly. Her father crouched down in front of Grace. "You said they'll come looking, so we give them a reason to stop." "What do you mean?" "We make them think you're dead." Grace went very still. "How?" Emma's father looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "We burn the wagon." They set the fire just before dawn. Emma's father soaked the wagon bed with kerosene and piled it with blankets, coats, anything that would burn hot and fast. He left Grace's torn coat draped over the seat, visible from the road. Then he struck the match. The flames climbed fast, hungry, and Emma watched her last piece of home turn to ash. But this time it was her choice. This time the fire meant something. By the time the riders found the wreckage, Emma and her father were already gone. They doubled back on foot, circling wide through the canyon, and met the other families at the mining camp just after sunrise. Grace and Samuel came with them, silent and hollow-eyed, but alive. The miners didn't ask questions. Out here, no one did. They gave them water, blankets, a place to rest. And when the railroad men rode through 2 days later, asking about fugitives, the miners shrugged and said they'd seen a burned wagon, 2 bodies maybe, hard to tell. The railroad men left satisfied. Emma's father never rebuilt the ranch. There was nothing left to rebuild. Instead, he took work as a carpenter in a town called Silver Creek, 3 territories west. Emma learned to sew, to cook, to stretch a dollar until it screamed. It wasn't the life they'd planned, but it was a life. Grace and Samuel stayed with them. For a while Grace barely spoke. She moved through the days like a sleepwalker, always listening for hoofbeats that never came. But slowly, so slowly, Emma almost didn't notice. She started to heal. She smiled once at something Samuel said. Then again, and again. Samuel carried the wooden horse everywhere. Even years later, when he was too old for toys, Emma would catch him holding it in his pocket, thumb rubbing the worn wood like a prayer. Emma never forgot the night she opened her eyes and saw her world burning, but she also never forgot the choice her father made in the canyon, the choice to see 2 strangers not as witnesses or liabilities, but as people worth saving. Years later, when Emma had a ranch of her own and a daughter who asked about the past, she would take out that story like a keepsake. She would tell her daughter about the fire, about the girl and the boy, about the wagon they burned to save 2 lives, and she would end it the same way every time. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't surviving the fire, it's deciding what you're willing to burn to save someone else. The wooden horse sat on the mantle, a reminder, a promise, that mercy, even in the hardest places, was never wasted.